Clay, are you a big fan of Top Chef, the cooking competition challenge that's been going on for 57 seasons and stars the guest star of this episode of Star Trek Enterprise?
Nope.
We'll be back after this break. We're going to play a clip from the episode. We'll come back and we're going to break down Precious Cargo.
Would you mind telling me what's going on here?
How long have I been in stasis?
You'd have to ask them. Commander Tucker to Enterprise. Enterprise, do you hear me?
You are an officer.
Chief Engineer. Feels like we've gone to warp.
Explain yourself. What do you know about my abductors?
We thought they were cargo pilots. They claimed you were their passenger.
I am their prisoner. I was returning from a diplomatic mission when they attacked my transport, murdered my guards.
All right, so Precious Cargo is the 11th episode of the second season of Star Trek Enterprise. It aired on December 11th, 2002. Teleplay goes to David A. Goodman. Story credit goes to Rick Berman and Brannon Braga. Directed by David Livingston. In-universe date is September 12th, 2152. In this episode, after Enterprise rescues a pair of aliens with a mysterious cargo, Trip finds himself in a major predicament after he accidentally opens said cargo, which is what happens in this episode. This is written by David Goodman, who I believe came over from Futurama to Enterprise at this point. And I'll throw it to you with this. We generally come into episodes like this where this is one where I kind of have to feel I'm obligated to say that this always makes a top 10 worst episodes of Star Trek list. Always. It's like reliably hated. People really don't like this episode. It gets a lot of shellacking. People make fun of it. I think I'll have to defend it semi. I think this is a tremendously average episode of Star Trek Enterprise that's almost completely torpedoed by a terrible guest star performance. Like, that's the main takeaway from it. But I think if Padma Lakshmi's performance was better, I don't know if anyone would really talk about this episode. But that's it for me. But I have more to say about it. But I don't think this one ever really deserves to be hated the way that it is. Admittedly, it's not a good episode. What say you?
Who doesn't love sexy Darmok? That's
Yeah.
basically what the beginning of this episode is. Well, the first thing I thought watching this was everybody who complains that modern Star Trek is too much like Star Wars has clearly never seen this episode, because this is essentially the subplot of Star Wars done in an hour.
The Han and Leia subplot,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And it's I don't know if a better performance could have saved it. It might have helped, but between zero chemistry between your two leads,
Yeah.
every single possible cliche they could possibly, it was closer. It was almost like I was watching Spaceballs, the way that they were going at each other. I expected Bakula to turn to the camera and say, "Funny, she doesn't look Druish." But it's every single cliche in the book as far as the love them and then you or hate them and then you love them romance plot, and then this secondary weird plot where Archer and T'Pol threaten the guy with a court-martial and execution to figure out how to find the ship. Like, where on the list of Starfleet regulations is fool them into thinking you're going to execute them?
He's writing the book as it comes out.
I guess so. Yeah.
Did you would you say this is a terrible episode? Would you be like, this is a pretty awful episode of Star Trek? Like, I feel that the episode, we had that 3-episode stretch before this, just about 5 episodes ago, where I think all those episodes are worse than Precious Cargo is.
Yes. I would say those are worse episodes of television. I think this is a terrible episode of Star Trek.
So here's what I think is going on with this episode, and I might have my facts wrong, but I'm going to stick with it. I didn't have a chance to look it up. I'm pretty sure Goodman came from Futurama at this point. I think that makes sense timeline-wise. This episode to me feels like a Futurama writer trying to adapt to how a Star Trek episode should be written, while still kind of bringing a Futurama sensibility to it. And what I think he wants this episode to be is a real almost parody of a Disney princess who's kind of a dick to the person who finds her in Star Trek, right? So
it's very much like, feels like Aladdin or something.
Yeah. So she's, even the way she's dressed and the way that she talks, she feels like she should be a weird parody of a nice girl Disney princess that Trip is kind of stuck with. And it's going to pair his old boy Southern Florida charms against this regal pain in the ass character who only talks in a very comically over the top, I said matriarchal, but like monarchical way, like a very queenly, stately. And I think that the comedy also goes into the weird Archer subplot, where I think that's supposed to be a funny plot, obviously. But what Braga and everyone have said from that oral history is just that people have a hard time writing for Star Trek. They would find great writers who had written great things. They would bring them in, and they just couldn't get the tone right in Star Trek. They couldn't write the characters the way they wanted. The characters would not talk the way that they wanted. They had some small story about one writer came in and he had to write an auctioneer in Star Trek, but he wrote him as if he was a real auctioneer. And when it came out, people were like, "This isn't how Star Trek." He said, "Yeah, the one over here, this fridge over here." It's like that's not how Star Trek sounds. This to me sounds like.
Question.
Go ahead.
Why was there an auctioneer in Star Trek?
There's a later episode that we'll get to that handles this, but the initial draft of the writing was not how Star Trek characters talk, and I guess it's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to write like Star Trek characters are supposed to sound. That to me feels like this. It feels like a writer coming over from another show trying to get his tone into an episode of Enterprise. And I know Braga rewrote this one, which is probably another thing that goes over it. But I think there's a funniness in this that's really smothered by how unfunny Star Trek has to be. You know what I mean? I think there's comedy here that they stripped it out completely, and you're left with just the bare bones of what happens in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think... But the comedy they're doing is just so hack.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like as you were saying that, I was like, this works for me, and maybe this was, I don't know, maybe this was part of the rewrite that they stripped this out. I think I would love this episode if the princess was like a very inhuman squid monster or something that Trip ends up having the same relationship with and falling in love with the exact same way. Someone with like lots of prosthetics and weird shit, like someone who's not conventionally gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. It plays off if she's hideously ugly, it plays into this sort of comedy of this is the way that stories like this have to go, where they fall in love by the end of it, but she's just a mean, horrible person to him, and through this adventure they fall in love. There's almost a satire to that, but they don't do that. They obviously bring in one of the most beautiful women in the world to play the role, and she can't act. And it all sort of torpedoes itself at that point.
Excuse me. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I would be interested to read the original script and see how different it was. Cause if you made some substantial changes, maybe this doesn't fall as flat, but I don't know. It's pretty stock to me.
Very stock to me, which I guess is my point. This feels, to me, it just feels like an Enterprise episode. I don't think there's anything that's really catastrophically different from it. I feel like it coasts along under what it considers to be its own charms. It has a minor little struggle, a little bit of a side plot that's going on. It's someone looking for people. There's kind of a tangentially unrelated ending that ties everything all together, and then they go off on another adventure and they meet somebody that they're unfamiliar with. It feels pretty standard for an Enterprise episode.
Yeah.
Not in a way that Marauders and things like that just felt so generic that it was like upsetting or annoying. This one isn't. It just feels like the production here is really bad, and her performance can't be overstated. How bad her performance is.
Right. Yeah. Oh, definitely. It is not good. But it's like I was getting flashbacks. I think we've talked about this before, but every now and then you watch a scene and you can really see that one person is not pulling the weight that the other person is.
That's called Precious Cargo. Every scene with Trip and her, yeah.
My go-to is always Batman Begins. Any scene between Katie Holmes and Christian Bale is just like you're watching two different movies. And that's not to say Katie Holmes is explicitly a terrible actress, but in that movie she was not good compared to Christian Bale, who is one of the best actors in the world.
Yeah.
This has that same feeling on like a high school drama level, where you've got like the one kid who's good for school, who's like good for his high school, and they cast
the daughter of the principal.
Yeah. And it's just not working. But aside from that, it's just, this doesn't feel like a Star Trek story to me. It's very much like a swashbuckling space opera type story.
Yeah. I
hesitate to even say space opera because it's not really very interesting, and they spend most of it in a pod. But like that sort of relationship thing that they're going for is very much not a Star Trek thing, and they don't throw enough curveballs at you to make it a Star Trek thing. Like that's why I was saying the thing about having her be like very alien or something. They don't throw you any curveballs. It's just the most stock version of
rescue the princess.
Rescue the princess.
The difficult princess that you fall in love with over the course of the episode.
Yeah, African Queen or whatever, Spaceballs or Star Wars, whatever you want to go with.
I think there's a TOS episode called The Lawn of Troyes, which is very similar to this. Like Kirk picks up an alien queen who's really a pain in the ass to him, and I think eventually he convinces her that, she should just be more accommodating. But that one's weirder because it's dressed up in like 60s sort of gender roles, where that kind of makes sense in the Star Trek world of that time. This one doesn't. What always strikes me about this is, well, particularly when I watched it this time, I kind of felt a sort of sympathy and sadness for Connor Trinneer in this position, right? Who's playing Trip, where imagine like, I don't know, it was like a weird high school, like not personal flashback, but it felt like a very high school thing to me, which reminded me of this story that you were just saying. But like, he's this, he's an actor working on this sort of franchise show. It's not a huge show. Like people watch it, but it's not, it's not Cheers or whatever. Not Cheers, but it's not The Wire that is going up against or some other big hit.
No one's making money off of Cheers conventions. That's all I have to say.
And so this supermodel woman is brought in, and he has to play naked against her. Like he has to strip down. He's got to do the acting and carry the work for her. And it's this beautiful woman who comes in, and a lot of the shots they're in that pod, so they're like sitting on each other, like very close. And he's got to, I just felt this really male struggle if he's got to sit there and still do his job of saying the plasma coils have caught on fire while this woman who obviously doesn't act and doesn't know anything about Star Trek is sitting next to him, and he's got to like do his job, but at the same time be like, I'm cooler than this. Like this is just what I do for a job. That's the whole tone I got the entire time. He's just carrying her. She's unfamiliar with it, and he's in this awkward position of having to spit all the sci-fi dialogue at her that makes this a Star Trek episode. And it just felt like it must have been a very awkward scene for him. Like this model comes in, and it's a tough job. I think it's a tough ask of him as an actor for this episode.
Yeah. I kind of, I was joking about it being sexy Darmok, but I feel like it would have been more successful if they had done that. Like, cause they do the first scene and it's like, cut. Holy shit. Is there any way we could rewrite this so all of her dialogue is in the alien language? And then just have Trip do exactly what he's doing, but just have her just say nonsense the entire time, because it'll come off better, I think. Like I think it would have. I think it would have been better to have that level of disconnect and play that story out like exactly the way it plays out, even if it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of funnier that way. Like they don't understand each other, but they're still yelling at each other, and they end up making out and whatever. Like
he sounded like the Enterprise writing staff at that point. It's like they're just gonna make out eventually.
Yeah, why not? And then, at the you can have a joke about it at the end when they end up back on the Enterprise and like the universal translator is kicked in so he can hear exactly what she's saying, and it is not in any way what he thought was going on. You would think Trip at this point would know, don't just go around having weird sex with alien women, because it's not going to end up well for you. Yeah.
He's really lucking out in that department. He's the only cast member doing
I forgot my favorite part about this episode, which really threw me, was the very opening shot where it was the Enterprise flying with him playing the harmonica. But when it started off, I was like, is this an episode of Roseanne?
It's another bad Enterprise cold open, which they've kind of mastered.
Terrible.
It's really strange. He's playing the harmonica, and then a ship comes out the window, and he looks at it, and Archer's like, can you come to the bridge? There's a ship here. And he goes, okay. And then they play the credits. It's just there's no setup there.
Control S. I'm taking the rest of the day off.
I crushed that cold open. Yeah, they tried to get as much time out of the joke of the universal translator not working for Padma. They tried a couple minutes of that. I have a weird... I don't know why I noticed it. It's because you notice things like this in bad episodes. But the language communication thing was kind of strange in this episode because those aliens come over and they seem to be speaking perfect English because they're not using the universal translator or anything, or if they are, it's just a kind of a function of being there and in their presence. Then they go back to the ship, and a Trip is like, I can't read your writing. And the guy's like, oh, that's weird. He's like, do you mind if I get your communicator? He's like, do you mind if Hoshi comes over here and helps me translate this? Why doesn't he just ask the guy what it says on the thing? Because they can clearly understand what he's talking about.
Well, you don't want to impose.
It was just to get Hoshi in.
You hire a plumber to come over, and the plumber's like, hey, can you show me how to turn the faucet on and off? It's embarrassing for the plumber.
I guess it was only just to get Hoshi because that's her only appearance in the episode, I think. She comes over and says, hey, Trip, what's going on? And then she leaves right there.
Does she not? I don't remember. Does she hand him like the universal? Does she pass the universal translator off to him or something?
Oh, does she? But then if that's the case, why are those guys speaking English? I guess would be the weird. Like I assume that they were, but there is some reason that he can't understand her at first because he drops the translator and it breaks or something, and he has to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, big question. She's not supposed to be a Trill, is she?
No, and I only noticed her spots at the end. Were they there the entire time?
Yeah, they were the whole time. I thought I was waiting for the shoe to drop. I thought that once they could understand, she was going to say, hi, my name is Queen, something, 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 of the blah, 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 blah. You could call me Dax.
I don't think she's a Trill. I'll have to look that up, I think. But I only noticed the spots at the very end. Unfortunately, it would have been nice if it was a Trill who would have added a little bit of something to it. Yeah, I don't
like. You need, in order to pull this off and have it not just be the most by the book thing you've ever watched in your life, you need like Kirstie Alley or Goldie Hawn or someone who has done this before and has that sort of level of built-in chemistry that she can manifest with her co-star in order to pull this off. And this just felt like a high school play.
Do you so you think that the chemistry is the main issue? Like
it's
besides not being funny,
it's systemic, I think. That's one.
I just thought that if there was chemistry, right? Like it was a decent actress who was who had a little bit of chemistry with Tucker. I still feel it's lacking something because I guess the way that I'm approaching it is that I just think that it's not funny. Like it's not funny enough. I think that they're trying to be funny and it's just not working, mostly because, well, this is what got me wondering about her performance. When they were directing her, were they giving her too much direction to play a kind of snotty princess? You know what I mean? Instead of her just acting as if she was herself in this world, who's just kind of a dick to Trip, was she trying to act like a real snooty, pain in the ass princess? And that's why this whole thing is so stilted and strange. Because if they were trying to direct her that way, I think that's where the comedy is supposed to come from. It's supposed to come from that portrayal. But she's not a good enough actress to pull that off. And I think that that's what's missing. Like I don't hold the chemistry against them because on some meta level, I almost find it funny that because there's no chemistry, they still follow the trope of just falling in love. And it's like, well, this is a strange thing that happened.
Then you're walking into like Tommy Wiseau territory.
Yes.
Where you're finding the highlights of it out of the fact that it completely whiffs.
Right.
I think the chemistry has to count for something because her performance is bad, but because her performance is bad, there's no chemistry between them because it just doesn't work.
Right.
And on top of that, the stuff they're saying is completely unremarkable. It's just by the numbers, whatever relationship stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff just not clicking whatsoever.
And like, it's as Mike from Breaking Bad would say, I feel like it's an episode of half measures when they should have gone the whole way. Like, they have that scene where she gets into the pod and she can't get in with a long dress, so she just tears her dress off and has like a mini skirt for the rest of the episode. You know, there's something,
which is again like in the top 5 cliche things you do in one of these things.
Right. Women's like women's like flowing silk dresses are always very difficult to maneuver. So you're better off just tearing the thing off and hopping in there. But like, I kind of feel that they could have had comedy if there was maybe Tripp isn't the character for this, but like a Reed who's stuck with her, and she is, he's very prim and proper and sort of off-put by the fact that she's stripping down through this entire thing for various reasons. She's just losing clothing or something like that.
If you had flipped the roles, that would have been a lot of fun.
Flip for Reed? Do you mean Reed, or do you mean
like flip the dynamic? So yeah, let's say you put Reed in there, then you have Reed play the princess role essentially, and then you have your princess play the hard-nosed, mechanic role. Yeah.
I just think it's missing that one gear. It's missing that gear that it moves into, or something propels it forward.
I think it falls in the same category as Marauders, which is just they took that thing, that genre thing, and they just did that thing. They made no changes to the formula. They made no attempt to make it their own in any way. It's like the bar cover band version of a Foo Fighters song or something, where it's just, they did it. They not as good as other people have done it, but that's what it is. They didn't try to do anything original with it. They just covered it.
There was a Brannon Braga was on a Star Trek podcast the other day talking about his memories of First Contact. And they asked him about, I'm confusing things. So on that podcast, Manny Kodo, who takes over the Enterprise in the 4th season, was talking about Enterprise, and he said something interesting. He's like, when I came on, Brandon was still running the show, and they didn't have a writer's room at that time on Enterprise. What you do is the writers would come up with scripts, and they would meet with Braga in his office, and over the course of the meeting, they would come up with the outline for their episode together. And Kodo was just saying he's never worked like that. He's never thought that it was like, it never worked for him, so he brought a traditional writer's room. But he was impressed that Braga could hash out an outline just in that meeting with the writer, and that he would come up with something that the writer would go off and write about. And he said it was really kind of an impressive thing. To me, it actually struck me as that sounds exactly like how Enterprise was written. Is that someone came in with an idea, and over the course of an hour, Braga came up with the most generic, okay, this is how we write, this is the outline for this one, just like boom, 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 do that, go back and write that episode, and they would do it.
Yeah.
He mentioned it as a positive, but I clearly see how that is a hindrance to the writing on this show. It's just so, there's nothing clever about it. He's just trying over the course of an hour to make something for a writer to write about, and it's not clever or thoughtful.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't know if there's ever been a show that's worked this way. Probably not, because it seems like a lot of work for their showrunner, but in Marvel Comics in the 60s, they Stan Lee and mostly Stan Lee and the other writers who were working there. It was mostly Stan Lee because his name was on everything. Came up with this style. I think they came up with it, which they called the Marvel method, where basically you bring Jack Kirby would come into Stan Lee's office, and Stan would be like, "Okay, this month in Fantastic Four, I want them to fight the Mole Man. I want Reed and Sue to have some relationship problems, and then throw in a little cliffhanger about the next monster that's going to show up in the next issue. All right, go ahead." And then Jack Kirby would go off and he would draw 22 pages of that story. And then he would come back and he'd give Stan the art, and Stan, looking at the art, would then write the story on top of it, with all the dialogue and everything, which is why you get so many arguments over who created what and who the real originators was, and Stan Lee was a hack, blah blah blah. It was a group thing. One couldn't have happened without the other.
Yeah,
but it's a really interesting way to write something that is an ensemble creation like that, because you come up with the idea, give them the basic breakdown, they go off and they do it, and they come back, and then you can fine tune it. And I think South Park might actually work like this based on that documentary that they did a few years ago.
Yeah,
where it was like they have
5 days to air or whatever.
Where it's like they come up with an idea, they write a script, and then they give it to Trey Parker. Is it Parker? Yeah, I think it's Parker.
Yeah. Who does the final rewrite.
Yeah. But that seems more productive than this method you're describing, which is someone brings something in and then you just hammer it into a formula.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Like you type it into your Enterprise episode algorithm website.
Yeah.
You pick which character you want to be the lead and which one you want to have a disease and how you want Mayweather to be sidelined.
It's just mad lib. He just has the chart. He's like, well, how is he going to be sidelined this time?
Yeah.
It feels like, well, all the interviews just say he seemed like he was overworked. It's like, well, no kidding. This is like the least efficient way that you can possibly write these scripts.
I don't know. Like the big disconnect hearing that story to me is that we've talked about previously how it feels like they don't care about this show. Like they're just doing it to do it. There's no passion built in.
Yeah.
If I was the showrunner and I didn't have any passion for the show, I would want to do as little work as possible. Right.
That story actually made me. I wish I could recall the statement that they don't care. What I think that they're doing is that their work process does not give them the bandwidth to really care. Like they just have to get it done, and it's just a really inefficient process of doing stuff like that. And the show changes in the 4th season, and everyone loves the 4th season, but the whole writing process became a room event at that point, and it just took it out of one man's hands. Really, and that's the problem. It is again it's the problem with Enterprise. They all feel the same because they are heavily written by Braga, who has no time to really care about any of these scripts. And that's really the problem with Enterprise at this point, I think.
And then you've got Rick Berman over there who's like, what if it was a Western? I'm sorry. That's unfair. I don't know anything about him. I'm sure he's a nice guy.
He definitely probably had a hand in the casting of Padma here, I think, would be his influence.
That's one of those things where I wonder if the original version was like Trip and female Zoidberg stuck in a thing, which is hilarious. And then they're like, well, nobody wants to see that. Brannon, can't we get like, you know what? I just saw this movie, had this beautiful Indian woman in it. What if we got her? Nice and exotic looking, have her, she'd tear the skirt off. The guys will like that.
They got those long legs. Right.
Like that seems like the kind of thing that gets changed between the original version and the final version.
Yeah. Or it's just they're like this script isn't really reading well. We gotta pull in something else here.
I got an idea, Brannon. What if there's a planet where full of women, and when they get really stressed out, their bosoms just get huge, and their shirts they just can't contain them. And it's a Western.
Braga's like, I like it. How does Mayweather get? Well, the boobs just hit Mayweather in the face. They knock him out. Yes. He's taken out for the entire episode
instantly.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Archer to Paul storyline.
I don't know why in my head Rick Berman is like the producer from the 1920s and the Three Amigos.
Just chomping on a cigar. It's Brandon. Yeah. Brandon, the kids are loving it. The T'Pol and Archer
Brandon,
thing.
Get me a 7 of 9 type broad. Put some ears on her. Give her a boy's haircut. Everyone will love it.
T'Pol and Archer, I think, is maybe my only way to stress my point about what Goodman was doing with the entire script, which is that it's trying to be funny, but he's really hampered by what Star Trek can do as a funny type story. So what I like about the Archer and T'Pol thing is that I think it actually cleverly works for Bakula as captain of the ship, because he's not a good badass. So when he comes in and he's playing badass, you as an audience member go, oh, he's definitely lying. Like there's no way that he can actually play this effectively. And then when the reveal comes that he's just doing it to game this guy, I kind of feel it's an appropriately Archer tactic. I feel in some ways like this isn't an established Federation Picard diplomat who's going to be like, well, listen, Mr. Wrinkly Face, like we get you to where you need to go. Archer's got a little bit of a early human playfulness in him still, and he's willing to do it. the thing that doesn't make sense is I don't understand how he convinced DePaul to do this, because it doesn't seem like a DePaul thing to do.
You would think that conversation goes something like this. DePaul, we'd like to fool this guy into thinking we're going to execute him. And she goes, isn't that lying? That doesn't seem logical to me. It's like, damn it. I didn't count on you saying that. Because I'm aware.
I wish Trip was here.
Yeah, I'm aware of your people as a concept and a character in this universe we exist in. I forgot that you kind of have a problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the strange part of it.
I would love to have seen the scene where he convinces her to do it.
Yeah, that's a good scene that's missing. Yeah.
Yeah, the way it plays now, it's like this is just their routine that they do every time they have someone come on the ship.
Yeah, but, I think the show thinks it would ruin the joke is the problem. But I think the audience knows the joke the entire way, so I don't think there's anything to be lost by playing that role up between the two of them and having Archer. I think it works for Archer because Bakula, the way that Bakula plays Archer, I'm never going to buy him as a gravitas guy who's like, I'm going to deliver the speech that's going to bring all these planets in line and make us join the Federation. He's kind of a happy-go-lucky, willing to joke around goofball in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I think that this plot works for him. And also, I kind of like the actor of the alien. I think the actor who plays that alien does a pretty good job of being that kind of a character. Yeah,
he does. He's a pretty good actor. And I was going to say also, with that joke, I think using T'Pol blows the joke, because shouldn't you use someone who's less imposing? Like he's talking them up as like, we have this crew member from this race of people who are really hard asses, and I honestly, they've already killed 4 people on this ship. I don't know if you're gonna make it out of this alive. And then the door opens and it's like Reed with like a stupid oversized robe on or something, or like Phlox.
It's Reed on Mayweather's shoulders with a trench coat. Just
yes, exactly. Yeah, or Phlox or something. Someone who's like it. That's because that's the joke, right?
Yeah,
that's how the jokes work. And I think this episode, what you're describing is it's like when you tell a joke to somebody and then that person then tells it to a third person, but the second person telling the joke doesn't get what's funny about the joke.
Right.
Like if that doesn't come across, but you're saying the same stuff, it's not going to come across as funny. And I think that's what the problem is. It's like if this was a, gutbuster laugh riot script in its original version, it just got squeezed out through, I guess maybe Brannon Braga isn't a very funny person. I don't know.
No, I don't think he is.
Just like didn't get it. And then on top of that, give it to a director who doesn't really get it and doesn't get what they're going for. And then the cast who are not really comedy actors
right
on a comedy show. So you got to tell them that that's what they're doing.
Yep. With a good portion of the comedy coming to a non-actress really at this point, right. Like it's a lot. It's
I think Bakula was probably smart enough to get it.
Yeah.
Like I think those guys got it, but I don't necessarily know if the director and stuff really understood it.
I think Bakula clearly understands it in his performance. I don't think he's a particularly comedic actor, unfortunately. Like I think he's solid, but I appreciate his effort here, and I don't think that he's unfunny, but I think that he's really just built as an actor who plays every kind of a bland everyman. Like that's really what he is. And some of his most successful roles have been that. Someone made the point about Quantum Leap is that he's the bland character who becomes the other characters, sort of, right. Which is, it's like there's something about that. But I would have liked to have seen that. It's just I was just reminded of your story about how the comedy gets watered down, or it's viewed through a prism that someone doesn't really understand what's funny about it. It's the script writing version of the Aristocrats joke, right? Which is that everyone knows what the joke is, but what makes great comedians good at telling that joke is that they can tell the entire story and make you laugh, because even though you know what the punchline is going to be, there's something inherently funny about the good people who tell that story, tell that joke very funny, and they make you laugh.
Right. That movie still has my favorite visual gag ever, where they're talking to Bob Saget, and he says, "Yeah, I had this huge thing. It was about this long." just about that long. It's the only people who watch the YouTube will have seen me butcher that joke.
Gilbert Gottfried has the best version of that joke in that documentary, if my memory serves me right. But that's what particularly Star Trek, I think, struggles with comedy, is because a lot of the directors, actors, and writers aren't particularly funny. So by the time it's through the 5 levels of production necessary to give you an episode, it's been watered down to a point where you no longer care. Not to say that this script is good. I think Goodman himself said that he doesn't like the script that eventually became the thing. So it is what it is.
I'd be curious to see what his original version was like, if that's what happened, if it just got wrung out of all of its interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think I was reading, he said there were 2 versions and he didn't like either of them. So I think it was just him struggling to figure it out. He didn't get fired, so they obviously like something about it, but I'm not sure. Phlox doesn't appear in the episode. That's a little bit of factoid there. I don't think I have anything else. Go ahead.
I find it so strange that it's played so straight. You know, you would think if you, at the very least, if you took that concept and said, okay, what if we run this concept through a Star Trek filter? It's going to be different and kind of interesting in some respects. Yeah. Right? You would hope. I don't know.
Well, I'm just trying to, if you wanted to take that concept and make it Star Trek-y, I think it does. I don't know. Like because I do feel that the concept is there. It's just this execution. Like I think it's Trip is the wrong person to send her off with. And I don't think Bakula will work. I think Reed is really the one that she's supposed to get stuck with. Because I do feel that they act like
if it's going to be Reed, it's got to be a different actress.
Yeah, well, I would say that almost for everybody. Padma's just not the one who's really cutting it. I just I don't know. Do you have any ideas of how you would make it more Star Trek-y? Because
like I was saying, have her be more alien,
just more,
or again, just use the universe you're in to put a twist on this concept in any which way. I don't know. There's a million ways you could do it in a sci-fi setting.
I'm trying to think how it works for Enterprise. Because why I think they chose Trip to do this, besides the sort of like sex appeal of these 2 young, relatively attractive on his side and extremely attractive on her side, people hooking up on the camera, is that I think they're trying to get that Enterprise good old boy charm paired off against this uptight monarch character. Sure. Right? So I can kind of see that as the Enterprise take on this, where Picard or TNG or DS9 wouldn't have that character or that kind of interaction with a person.
That's how this is played literally every time they do it. That's not Enterprise specific.
Right. So I don't know if there's a way to bump up the Enterprise-iness of it other than what they've done. It might just be a flawed concept from the very start, which I think is what we're kind of leaning into here. T'Pol and the Princess?
Yeah, why not?
That actually wouldn't be bad.
Brannon, I got a great idea. Well, put both broads in the small, tight,
womb-like environment. Well, I think it was
so hot in there.
He's like, Brannon, remember that episode where Scott rubbed his face into Paul's tits? How about we have Trip rub his face in her ass while they're sitting in the pod? Because they do that thing here too, where he's like, I have to check the sensor temperature or something.
But don't forget, the pod is so small. Don't forget, this is UPN. So after they kiss, we do a dissolve, and they're in their underwear. They're just hugging. We can't imply anything else has happened.
I wanted to get dressed after doing the nasty, but not that dressed. You know what I mean?
On her planet, you strip down to your skivvies and you just hug from behind.
It is a very loving embrace in the moment.
I am going to never watch an interview with Rick Berman just so I can assume this is what he sounds like.
It's just, the modern documentary take is just, Brannon Braga gets a phone call, he picks it up, and then it's very Quentin Tarantino. It just slides over, and it's Berman on the toilet talking about it. I said, Brannon, that's some inspiration. All right, I think we're done talking about Precious Cargo. I don't have anything else to say about it. We'll take a break. We'll read some patient thoughts. Maybe that'll spark something. We'll give our final thoughts about this one. It's called Precious Cargo.
What are you waiting for?
I'm not your servant. You're the one who was raised in a primitive environment. You find the wood.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're obviously better suited to physical labor.
In case you haven't noticed, we're not in a palace. You said it yourself. You won't survive without my help. So it seems to me that I'm the one in charge, the king of the swamp. Now get your ass out there and don't come back without an armful of dry wood.
I should have you imprisoned for speaking to me that way.
You should give me a medal. You'd be dead if it weren't for me.
I'm beginning to think that would be preferable.
I doubt the commoners back home would complain.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile. It's the best way to do it. A couple dollars a month gets you extra stuff like extra podcasts, extra Rick Berman impressions, and all that good stuff. And as always, we have a special thank you to our $10 Captain tier supporters: Christian Pouch, Tarek Latif, Chris Tinsley, Mike Burnett, Sean Cardinal Doomsday, Joint Mango, Matt Cutler, Ben Douglas, Kyle Barrett, Samuel Custer, Nick Sergi, Bradley Killens, Matthew Ross, Rune Bendler, Nathan Elliott, Eric Johnson, Andrew Cherlog, Ben Grim Santo, Point Extra G, Dwayne Hackett, Paul Orozco, Jordan Cooper, Derek Zajac, Kevin Race, Vault 13 Hero, Stefan Minton, Nick the Rat, Darth Mosk, AJ28, Mad Curry 6, Jacob 123, Mike Harris, Jakey's Gamer, Patrick Seba, Captain Brazen, Kevin Lowry, Eric Santorn, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Timothy Cooley, Zane Majors. Thank you very much for supporting the show. You are our precious cargo. We will not open you up.
I think Brannon Rick Berman might be related to Brandon Brandanowitz, the brand manager who shows up infrequently on the Badass podcast.
It's a long history of working in showbiz and in production. Let's go to patron thoughts, I suppose. There's only 7, which I'm surprised by because this is a episode that I would have thought would have inspired more. But
we got to do the thing. We got to do the thing where she tears the skirt. It's my favorite part. Every time they do this story, it's my favorite part. We got to do it.
There's a real exotic broad in there. Show her legs. It's good. It's a small pod. Did I mention it's a small pod, Brandon?
It's so small. And she sits on his hand. Oh my God.
Do you think they played up the I felt there was a lot more to do. It felt weird to me. It felt like the script almost would have focused on the smallness of the pod more than the direction actually did towards the end of it. Like they do it by just everything is a single shot of the two of their heads stuck together to show you that it's a tight spot. And she sits on his hand and he's trying to fiddle with something and he has to stick his head up her ass or whatever. But like there's no, I felt like there's more comedy in there too that you could really distill because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this episode is the Star Trek equivalent of a comedian bombing on stage. That's what this is.
Yeah. Just trying to come back and it's just not working. Matt Ross says, this is just a terrible retelling of the 1974 film Swept Away minus the nudity and political discussion. Why does Archer volunteer Trip to fix every damn alien ship they run into? How about a security detail with the repair crew? Hasn't Archer learned anything? Oh, and the woman being important and pretty and a bitch, Elan of Troy style, of course. In real life, she's a celebrity chef. 1 pair of nice long legs out of 5. 6?
I was also thinking, for some reason, what stood out to me earlier in the episode when Archer's trying to convince them to stay on and they'll just warp 5 their way over to the planet or whatever. He says, you can dock in our something thing.
I didn't understand what he planned to do with the ship.
Yeah, because at first I was, to be honest, I was watching the beginning of it last night and I was like half asleep. So I couldn't remember what the ship looked like. So I was like, oh, maybe it's small enough that they could dock it inside.
Shuttle pod. Enterprise. Yeah, like it's some kind of shuttle. Yeah.
But then I was watching it again today and I saw the ship and I was like, if you can go to warp with like an entire another ship attached to you, like Nightcrawler.
I have no idea what he was talking about. He specifically says you can dock in our shuttle bay, and the thing is huge.
Yeah.
And I was like, is he saying he'll bring them on the Enterprise to that planet and then go back and pick up the other ship or something? It's like it makes no sense.
The way it sounded to me was that they were going to attach each other and then they were going to like tugboat them.
Yeah, tractor beam, essentially. An early tractor beam. They don't have the tractor beam yet, but there would be that idea.
Which I'm pretty sure you can't do.
I don't think they can do that at warp, no. I don't think it's ever happened. Yeah, I don't. It's another, it's the other intentional runner they clearly want Archer to be overly helpful, which I also like as a trait of Archer, that he's the new kid on the block who wants to make friends. So he's like, hey, you want to borrow my video games? You want to do any of this stuff? And
well, he has intentions here because they're going to a planet that the humans haven't been to, right? Because he said think about making first contact with these guys, know the planet and stuff like that. So he's not doing it entirely out of the goodness of his. But
no. And we haven't really talked about, like, do you, it's very small, we don't have to talk about it a lot. Does the actions of the smugglers make sense here to you? To me, they make sense if the way that they treat Enterprise and the way that they treat Archer, which is the captain's like, hey, can you make me some scrambled eggs? I'll hang out and have some scrambled eggs with you. Only makes sense if they actually have not kidnapped her. And that they're delivering her as a job. But if they've kidnapped her, why are they spending so much time with the Enterprise where it could be revealed that this is what has happened to them?
Well, I was very confused as to whether or not both alien guys were in on it. Because the way that they play it after the one guy fucks off is that the guy who got left behind is legitimately getting left behind and doesn't know what's going on.
But he's not the captain who wanted to stay for the food, I don't think. I think that's the other character.
Well, either way, the guy who gets left behind does not, to me, seem like he knows what's going on.
Right.
Which then made the interrogation scene that much weirder to me. Because like I never got the feeling like this guy was just being purposely
hard. Yeah, he's not going to betray his fellow smugglers.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know. He left me behind. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything about what's happening. And then like to take that character and threaten to execute him, it's supposed to be funny. I don't know. It's just by the end, I still wasn't sure because they get the information out of him on how to track them, but
yeah, does he give up? He gives up the warp signature or whatever.
Yes,
yeah.
But I never got the feeling that this guy was not being honest.
I guess that's true. Now that you've sparked my, so I guess as long as they get that warp signature from him, I guess that's enough. And I agree with you that I don't think he knew what was going on the ship. I don't get that impression. He doesn't play it that way anyway. He plays it as kind of like the buffoon who was just along for the ride.
Which is then also weird because you would think he'd be like, "Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, just let me go.
What's going on as much as you do. You don't have to. You don't have to threaten to kill me."
But it'll be funnier. Thomas Darnell says
to Paul, this is going to be so fucking funny. Would you just do this? Just do this one thing for me, please. Just one thing.
Could you go get your robes? Get your very, very fancy robes. Thomas Darnell says...
What do you mean? No, Mayweather can't do this. Maybe he just blew his knee out. I don't know what's going on.
Precious Cargo. Okay, one thing that was cool was that her planet was in the Klingon Empire in TNG, which for all their talk is about the only evidence we've ever seen that they conquer anybody. I remember the race because there was a TNG novel depicting them very differently than her. So you take that, add a dash of isolated man and woman equals romance, and a dollop of space is chock full of planets everywhere, and then just let Trip make the dumbest decisions. I could almost give this a 3, but the hokey trial bluff cringes it down to a 2. It's an interesting take.
He brought up something that I keep meaning to find a way to talk about, because I think when we were talking about Picard, we were talking about the Romulan Empire and saying Empire implies that they've conquered more than their own planet. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about the Klingons, and I was like, there's never been any evidence that the Klingons exist outside of Kronos.
No.
And it just always struck me as interesting, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess if you were an alien and came to Earth, you'd still call it the British Empire, even though it's just they're stuck on Earth.
Yeah, the scale. So we're just to assume that they call themselves empires because they've captured a significant amount of territory on their home planets and become the dominant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if the Romulans actually have conquered other planets or not. I'm not sure. No,
they must have in this. I think the Klingons have been. There have been plots before where they deal with a planet that was like captured by the Klingons or something, but you'd think you'd run into a whole bunch of subjugated people by the Klingons storylines. Right. Yeah.
Plus, you'd think they'd want to get off that planet as quickly as possible. There's a bomb in the center of it.
That's right. It's dangerous. Very dangerous. Latte Librarian says, the faux Trill princess ripped her dress to get into the escape pod, but then went into the escape
part, Brannon.
Then
my favorite part.
Then went into the escape pod in a way that didn't require her to have ripped her dress. I guess the viewers needed that shot of her legs. This episode also includes the most unconvincing escalation of argument to mud wrestling to kissing I've ever seen. I would have much preferred a Star Trek take on Top Chef. 2 stasis pods out of 5.
I just repictured that scene where she like can't pick her legs up, so then she very awkwardly rips her skirt and then even more awkwardly just ass first is her way into the thing.
That was, I mean, and Trip shrugs at the camera at that point. Like that's the comedy of the episode, I think, is supposed to be in those details, and it's just really smothered in a way that doesn't make any sense.
What if he turns and goes, women?
Can't live with them. Can't live without them. Nick the Rat says, Archer put on his bad cop pants and then his good cop pants. Who knew one person could be both cops? Keitama is pretty hot, but not as hot as Trip. This episode was like softcore porn with the butt hatches, tight quarters, and small joysticks. When they implied T'Pol killed 20 people on the crew, I laughed, and when T'Pol played along, I laughed even more. The best part of this episode was probably the hot ship-on-ship docking. 2 out of 5. And Point Extra G says, what do you get when you take TNG as the perfect mate but strip it of everything good? The story just doesn't work. The story is bland, and Trip and the First Monarch have no chemistry. Every scene with the two of them is just painful. I know that Padma Lakshmi, I have a hard time with her name, Lakshmi, is well known now, but here she possesses all the acting ability of a turnip. On a side note, how did Archer get T'Pol to play along with his tribunal charade? We're going to have a tribunal. What does that mean?
Doesn't that require, like, I just assume it means 3 people.
You need a judge in there, or you need something else. Kyle Bear says, undoubtedly a terrible episode, Precious Cargo is, but not quite as bad as some make out. Despite Trip and the Princess trying and failing for a Han-Leia dynamic, it's not even on the level of Lone Star and Princess Vespa. There's something very watchable about them in a car crash kind of a way. Although, I was distracted by the real-world riddle of how and why Padma Lakshmi met and married Salman Rushdie while he was locked away under police protection with a fatwa on his head. Truly one of life's great mysteries. It's also a big missed opportunity to not have Archer be serious about having to host the ship's first tribunal and create Starfleet law on the fly, but no, it's just a lame joke. 1.5 out of 5.
Huh.
Interesting. Would you have wanted to see the tribunal be played seriously? Archer needs to settle the West and bring law to places where there is no law, and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't know. This isn't the episode to do that.
It's not, because he needs the information is the key point of this. So the charade makes a little bit of sense. I would like to see a tribunal episode where he.
This isn't the opening scene from Deadwood, where he has to.
You called in the law. You don't get to call him off because
he's not pulling the guy down to break his neck.
They should do a Enterprise episode where there's a serious murder. Or a serious crime.
Sure.
All murder is serious, I suppose, but a serious crime committed between crew members on the ship, and Archer has to play tribunal master for it. That's kind of a fun idea that plays into the idea that they are totally out there alone, and maybe this guy's important, the guy who did the crime, and it's like, do we have to lock him up? Like, we kind of need him. What are we supposed to do?
It's funny. Well, first of all, I just looked it up. The try in tribunal does not mean 3. Apparently no, it's just a court of justice, or
it's just where you try to get some justice.
Or the actual seat or bench for a judge to sit on.
Okay.
I was just thinking as we were saying this, have they done an episode where there's like a you've committed a crime on a planet, but now since you're back on the Enterprise, it's like, well, we can just like that sort of disconnect thing.
Yeah.
I feel like they've done that kind of, but they always play it for laughs. I don't feel like there's been an episode where someone goes down, does something very bad by accident or whatever, and now you have to determine, okay, well, do we let the law of this planet that we broke govern our guy, or do we take the guy and leave?
It's everyone's it has been done. The one example that pops to mind is everyone's favorite TNG first season episode, Justice, where Wesley Crusher crushes some flowers on a planet, and he does it in a random punishment zone, which is that the planet is a completely peaceful area except for they have this roving area that is.
They have a purge area.
They have a purge area where if you do something wrong in it, you're killed no matter what you've done. So
You get kicked in the butt with a giant boot.
So Picard has to decide whether or not he does the Starfleet thing and let the justice of this planet have its way, or if he has to rescue Wesley Crusher. So
Right, but they, excuse me, they haven't done that on Enterprise, and I feel like that's a interesting.
not on Enterprise, no.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that they could mine, seeing as that is unworn territory for these guys. How do you react to that?
Yeah,
The only times that they've done it, it seems like it's been a joke.
Sorry, I misunderstood. On Enterprise, it's been a joke. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Not. I thought you were talking about the series as a whole. No, but I do think there's because the Enterprise story there is that a serious crime happens and Archer does not allow that planet's justice to take place. Like he rescues them because they haven't really established this respect for planets between things yet. So there's no. Archer would see his people as more important than the sanctity of like diplomatic relations between the planets in the way that TNG does. I think that's the story in Enterprise.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know. There's room, Enterprise. There's room for these things, I suppose. Last comment, Benjamin Espinoza says, I love Padme, which I assume is a typo, but it's good to know that he likes Padme as well. He loves Padma, but Top Chef is definitely her lane. This run of Enterprise is so bad that it's getting to be a chore keeping up with the episodes. Was the mandate from the studios to make the series more adult? If so, the writers could probably have used a female on the writing staff to figure out how humans actually work. Bonus, we get Trip in his blue undies again. 1 phaser to the head out of 5. Thank you, patrons, for your thoughts about this episode.
They're actually, I mean, Padme also has a very awkward clothes tearing moment in Star Wars, so it works either way.
Yeah, it's all the same. We're just borrowing from each other. Everyone's got to make a little bit of money. Thank you, patrons, for your thoughts about this the episode.
Brannon, I just saw Attack of the Clones, and there was this great part at the end with the chick with the hair, just the middle of her shirt just totally ripped off. Is there anything we could do with that?
And this great line about sand. I totally related to it. We're done with Precious Cargo. Final thoughts. What do you want to give this one?
I don't think I can give it a 1. Because I think it falls into that trap where it's like, yeah, it sucks, and I don't think I'd ever want to watch it again. But like, it's still fairly competently made.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you going to give it?
I'm going to give it a 2. I don't think it ever deserves. It's in a vacuum. If I showed you this and those 3 other episodes, I'd be kind of surprised if anyone I blindly showed those to when Precious Cargo was the worst episode out of those 3, because the other ones are just really bad. This one, this one to me is clearly execution in a way. Like it's not fundamentally broken. It's kind of boring, but all the episodes of Enterprise in this season have kind of been boring. It's just the acting. It's her acting really torpedoes things and makes it whatever they were trying to do impossible. So I'll give it a 2. It's a semi-decent episode that has a couple real problems that hold it back, but it's not abysmal.
Yeah, I think it's not good.
It's not good.
It's not. I think we've kind of drawn this line before, where it's like there are bad episodes, and then there are episodes that are just so unremarkable they're just forgotten. And I think this is one of those where it's like, I'm not, if I'm getting in a let's make fun of Star Trek fest with some friends, and people will be like, oh, what about Angel One? What about pulling out Precious Cargo?
Yeah.
Maybe I would. Depends if I it depends who I'm with. Maybe if I wanted to impress people, I'd pull out a deep cut.
It's a dark horse. Like, oh shit, he is Precious Cargo.
Damn.
I never watched Enterprise at all. This guy's quoting mid-second season episode of Sandman.
That's a real fan.
Yeah. It's a 2 for me. We'll probably, when this podcast is over, just have to come up with a thesis about what makes it a truly terrible episode of Star Trek. Like I did have this thought, and we can just go out with this. I find that when we do this show, or when I'm just thinking about or looking at the episode lists for upcoming stuff, the consensus about the good ones is more reliable than the consensus about the bad episodes. Would you kind of agree with that? Like when people say a great episode is coming up, it's generally true. Like you generally go like that's a good episode. When a bad episode comes up, I find it's very personal about what people consider to be a bad episode, which is just is funny from why a good episode is a good episode, which seems more universal. And I don't really know why that's the case, but it's interesting. And I whenever we cover these like, oh, this is going to be a legendarily bad episode, I frequently come back and go, I was more impressed by the episode that no one left a comment about. Like, there's like, it's like, what the hell was that episode? And that was terrible.
You know what would be fun? Maybe as a Patreon thing, let's pick a one episode from each series, watch all three of them, and then see if we can parse out what makes them bad episodes, like you're saying.
Universally bad or just bad for each series? Because
universally bad, because it's like, well, what makes a bad Star Trek episode? Well, let's watch 4 of them, one from each series we've covered, and see what we can find out.
Right. No, it would be a good idea. It's something to do. We can have the patrons vote so we can get a audience idea of what they consider to be bad episodes too.
We could have like a March Madness bracket where we've got like all of our ones. And then people can vote and see what the worst
the winner would be.
Is.
That would be the best. That would be the best way to go about it. We're done. Patreon.com/The Penske File is the best way to support the show. Please do if you have any interest in supporting the show. If you do so before Halloween, you're going to get extremely exclusive access to us covering The Platform, which is a Netflix sci-fi horror movie, and Genesis. We'll be recovering Genesis, the TNG 7th season episode, which is a body horror episode and an underrated episode in my opinion. That's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
This week we've got new Badass coming out. Can't remember what the episode is off the top of my head, but next week we've got a new Rotten Horror Picture Show, which is
Fright Night.
It's our Halloween episode. And I think the night before we do it, we're going to do a patron watch along chat thing. Assuming it's still on Amazon Prime, but hopefully it will be.
Amazon was good when I did Amazon for the Star Trek commentary. It's a good group watch function. We were using that other thing before, which is not quite as good, but the Amazon one works well.
Yeah, I haven't used Amazon yet. I'm curious to see how it works. You said it worked pretty well, so I'm
everyone needs to have a Prime membership to join. That's obviously the difference because you're just independently streaming the show to yourself.
Right.
But that it was better than the other thing. I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah. So if you want to chat with me and Amanda, and I don't know if we're gonna be able to show up.
Yeah, maybe I can stop by.
It's fashionably late. Wes blows in, eating an apple like Jerry Dandridge.
I'll change the channel to Star Trek. So I'm gonna stream this movie instead.
Yeah, that'll be open to patrons, and we'll send out the information for that probably early next week.
Cool. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Let us know what you thought. If you didn't leave your comments as a patron, let us know what you thought about Precious Cargo. And leave a comment about what you think makes a bad episode of Star Trek, because it is something it's an interesting realization to me how custom the bad ones are.
Don't just say Wesley Crusher, because, come on. It's
obvious.
We get it. You're cool. Come on, let's be cooler and start pulling out the deep cuts on Enterprise like I do.
We're done. Thank you very much. We'll be back with the next episode, which is, there's no real reason that I do this, but I do it out of habit. Precious Cargo, the catwalk. Babe, don't you know what I mean on the catwalk?
We just had last week's episode of Badass was called Catwalk.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Does this one also feature Catwoman and a talking puppet?
No, and it's not even written by the Reeves Stevenses who wrote all those. That would have been a terrific little twist, but no, it's Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back with the catwalk. See you later.